brother and sister. Have a blessing day. And today I just want to answer a question. Is the story of Noah, the ark, and the flood it's a parable or a fable, or it's a real history? And I say this because sometimes, not long time ago, I was in a Sunday class, and a doctor was teaching the class, and he's well, very well educated doctor, and he know a lot of the Bible, or at least I thought so. And then he said in his argument that the history of Noah, the ark, and the flood was a parable, or something that a man was writing from his imagination. And he said that maybe it was writing around the time the Israelite people was living on the exile. And the professor was teaching that day, and when he finished the class, I close to him and I tell him that I'm not agree with him. I refuse energetically to say that the history of Noah isn't a parable or a fable. It's not right. It's not sound good. But he said that maybe it's true or it's not true. Anyway, the application is the same. But the reality is that it's not the same. It's not the same. And I say now why I say it's not the same, because this is important that we declare that the history of Noah existed and was a witness, a live witnesses about a man walking with God. Look, let me go through some of the passages through the scripture to answer this question, and to answer to this professor, this doctor, because it is important to establish a very good and healthy doctrine about this. Look. And I know we can answer him quoting a lot of scripture and a lot of theories about the flood and the ark and everything, but I don't want to do that. I just want to go through the scripture and then answer these issues. Look, the first scripture I look for is in Isaiah 54:9. And it's God talking here, and he said, as far as I am concerned, this is like in Noah's time, when I'm bold that the water of Noah's flood would never again cover the earth. In the same way I have vowed that I will not be angry at you or shout at you. Look, maybe it is interesting to remark that maybe God is wrong here, because if he knew that the history of Noah, the ark, and the flood was a parable, I think it's the time to say something about that. And if time to say, hey, you know, you can learn from this parable. But no, what God is saying here is talking and taking a witness, a testimony of a man who lived in long time ago and walked with God and obeyed God to build an ark and save the family from the flood. Look, the Isaiah lived or did his ministry before the Israelites went to the exile. But look Ezekiel 14:14. It's the same God talking here, because he said, even if these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they would save only their own life by their righteousness, declared the sovereign Lord. Look, for God, Noah, Daniel, and Job was a person who lived in a time after the flood. And well, Noah lived in the flood before the flood, but Daniel and Job lived in that time, and God is taking their example, their testimony, to mark a line or a rule to behave, or try to show other people to behave in the same way. So maybe if this is a parable, maybe God forgot about that, or maybe in his imagination the parable become a truth. Now, let me say this. For Jesus, the history of Noah and the flood was real. Look in Matthew 24:37. It says, for just like the day of Noah were, so the coming of the Son of Man will be. Hey, it's Jesus talking here, and he says, look, in that time when Noah was living, it was circumstances that bring the flood, and in the same way, when the Son of Man come in the future, it will be certain circumstances that remain in that time of Noah's time. But look, maybe Jesus wasn't sure if it is a parable or a story, right? No, for Jesus, it's real. Noah was a living man who walked with God, and he's taking also his witnesses, his testimony against that humanity, and now is for us to take that testimony to walk with God, to learn how to walk with God. Now, look in Luke 3:36, there in this passage is a genealogy. And this is a legal document for that time, and for this time too, and that time before Jesus Christ also. So in this legal document, it says that Jesus was the son of a bunch of people that is in a bunch that their name was very hard to pronounce, but look what he said. The son of Sem, the son of Noah, and the son of Lamech. And this Noah is the same of Noah who lived before the flood and after the flood. So for Jesus, or for the author of the Luke, taking this legal document, it said, look, Noah existed, was living in that time. He was a father of this man. So Noah is not a parable. It's not a fable. It's not something that come out from the imagination. Noah existed and give testimony to work with God and obey God. Now, for the author of Hebrews, the story of Noah and the flood was real also. In Hebrews 11:7, it said, by faith Noah, when he was warned about things not yet seen, with reverent regard constructed an ark for the deliverance of his family. Through faith, he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that's come by faith. So is the faith of Noah a fable of people who come from the imaginary mind of some author? Maybe it's not a real faith. So we are based our faith in some parable, in some imaginary man? No. Our faith is based in Jesus Christ, who gave testimony of men who walk with God. And one of those men is Noah, who walked with God, and now we have the testimony of Noah, and we learn of those testimony to walk with God in front of us, and give testimony to walk with God, and give it to us for the next generation too. In 2 Peter, the Apostle Peter say in 2:5, in 2 Peter 2:5, and if he did not spare the ancient world, but did protect Noah, a herald of righteousness, along with 7 others, when God brought a flood on an ungodly world. Look, Peter was a student, a disciple of Jesus directly. And maybe Peter also thought that it's a parable, this history of Noah. No, of course not. For Peter is sure that this is an event, an historical event that marked the humanity and changed the earth in all the aspects. For Peter, it was a real history. Look, I don't want to keep it going, but just let me think about this and say this just to finish. The history of Noah, the ark and the flood, was real. It was a testimony that God lived for us to learn how to walk with God. It's a testimony that where our faith is based, or our faith can grow up. It's a testimony, and like a testimony, we can learn how to develop that testimony to live that to the next generation. If it is a parable, maybe God was wrong. If that story was a parable, maybe Jesus was wrong. Maybe the prophet was wrong. Maybe the apostle was wrong. Maybe we are base our faith in something is wrong. No, hermanos, no, brother and sister, no. Our faith is based in Jesus Christ, who give testimony of real life, of real people who live and walk with God. And that's people live with God right now. And that's people watches over us, how our life is now, and how our faith is growing up, and how we are living this world to the next men and women of faith. So the history of Noah, the ark and the flood, is not a parable. It's a real history. In other ways, the scripture is the truth of the scripture is in doubt. Well, have a blessed day, brothers.